The Ku Klux Klan is an American white supremacist far-right extremist group with Protestant Christian roots. Founded in 1865 in the post-Civil War South, it has operated through secret societies advocating white nationalism, anti-immigration and racial violence. The Klan has undergone three major iterations. The first, during Reconstruction, targeted African Americans and Republican state governments through voter intimidation and violence, leading to federal crackdowns by 1871. The second, in the 1910s, introduced cross burnings and standardized the infamous white robes. The third, emerging in the mid-20th century, responded to the civil rights movement with bombings, lynchings and terrorism. Major attacks include the 1979 Greensboro massacre, the 1980 Chattanooga shooting and the 1981 lynching of Michael Donald. The blood-drop cross has been its most recognizable symbol since the early 1900s. Though attempts were made to expand internationally, the Klan remains largely a US-based group. Since the 2000s, it has aligned itself with neo-Nazi movements. The Islamic State, aka ISIS or ISIL, is a transnational Salafi jihadist group designated as a terrorist organization by the UN and numerous countries, including Muslim-majority nations. It seeks to establish a global caliphate through armed struggle and demands the obedience of Muslims worldwide. Rising to prominence in 2014, IS exploited the Syrian civil war to seize territories in Iraq and Syria, enforcing its extremist version of Islamic law over 12 million people. However, after years of conflict with American, Iraqi and Kurdish forces, it lost its last stronghold in the Middle East by 2019 and shifted to an insurgency. While weakened in West Asia, the IS remains active in Africa, where it still controls significant territory. Known for extreme brutality, the IS committed genocide against Yazidis and Iraqi Turkmen, persecuted Christians, Shia Muslims and Mandaeans, executed prisoners of war and publicized videos of atrocities. It carried out terror crimes worldwide, including the 2015 Paris attacks, the 2024 Kerman bombings and the 2024 Crocus City Hall attack. The group has been accused of sexual violence and is involved in the 2025 massacres of Syrian Christians and Alawites after the fall of the Assad government. Al-Qaeda is a Sunni jihadist organization founded in 1988 by Osama bin Laden and other veterans of the Soviet-Afghan War. It aims to unite the Muslim world under a global Islamic caliphate through militant jihad. Bin Laden became radicalized in the 1980s, seeing military victories in Afghanistan as proof that Islam could be defended through violence. After the Gulf War, he viewed the US as Islam's main enemy, especially due to its military presence in Saudi Arabia. In the early 90s, he moved to Sudan, expanding Al-Qaeda's network and launching attacks like the 1992 hotel bombing in Yemen. Under Taliban protection in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda carried out the 1998 US embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. Its deadliest attack came on September 11, 2001, costing the lives of nearly 3,000 people. This led to the US invasion of Afghanistan to dismantle Al-Qaeda and overthrow the Taliban. The group adapted by decentralizing, inspiring attacks worldwide, such as the 2004 Madrid train bombing and the 2005 London bombings. In 2011, bin Laden was taken out in a US raid in Pakistan. Al-Qaeda then shifted focus to regional conflicts, positioning itself as a defender of Sunni Muslims in wars like the Syrian Civil War. Today it remains active but more fragmented. The Provisional Irish Republican Army, short IRA, was a paramilitary group that aimed to end British rule in Northern Ireland and unify Ireland as an independent republic. Active from the late 1960s, it was the most prominent armed faction in the Northern Ireland conflict. The IRA claimed legitimacy as the true successor to the original IRA from the Irish War of Independence, rejecting the authority of both the UK and the Republic of Ireland, which classified it as a terrorist organization. Initially focused on defending Catholic communities from loyalist and police violence, it shifted to an offensive guerrilla campaign against British forces by 1970, receiving support from the Irish diaspora, the Palestine Liberation Organization and Libya's Muammar Gaddafi. The IRA carried out bombings and attacks in Northern Ireland, England and Europe, targeting military, political and economic sites as well as civilian contractors linked to British security. By the time of its ceasefire in 1997, the conflict had claimed over 1,700 lives. In 2005, the IRA officially ended its armed campaign. Splinter groups remain active today. The Taliban are a fundamentalist Islamic militia that emerged in the early 1990s during the Afghan Civil War. Its roots trace back to former Mujahideen fighters who resisted Soviet occupation in the 1980s. The movement itself was born in religious seminaries in Pakistan, and in 1994, Mullah Omar founded the Taliban, promising to restore order and enforce a strict interpretation of Sharia law. Gaining support by pledging to end corruption and restore security, the Taliban swiftly captured Kandahar and within a year advanced on Kabul. By 1996, they controlled roughly 75% of Afghanistan, imposing a harsh regime that banned music and television, destroyed cultural monuments, restricted women's rights, and carried out massacres against Afghan civilians. After the September 11th attacks by Al-Qaeda, a group harbored by the Taliban, the US invaded Afghanistan, toppling their government by December 2001. Surviving members fled, eventually regrouping as an insurgent force waging guerrilla warfare against the Afghan government and NATO forces. After 2 decades, the Taliban recaptured Kabul in 2021 following the withdrawal of coalition forces, reclaiming control of the country. Their government remains unrecognized internationally and is widely condemned. Boko Haram is a jihadist terrorist organization based in Nigeria with operations extending into Chad, Niger, Cameroon and Mali. The group was founded in 2002 by Mohammed Yusuf with the goal of spreading Sunni Islam and eliminating Shia influence in northern Nigeria. In 2009, it started an armed rebellion against the government of Nigeria. Since then, the group has caused the deaths of tens of thousands of people, displaced over 2 million, kidnapped children and contributed to regional famines. In 2015, its leader pledged allegiance to ISIS, but internal disputes led to a split, with a faction breaking away to form the Islamic State's West Africa province. Shekau was confirmed dead in May 2021, but Boko Haram continued its operations under a new leader, Bakura Doro. The Lord's Resistance Army is a Christian extremist militant group operating in Central and East Africa, founded in 1987 by Joseph Kony during the Ugandan insurgency against President Yoweri Museveni. Kony, who claims to be a spiritual medium and God's spokesperson, aimed to overthrow the Ugandan government and establish a theocratic state based on his interpretation of the Ten Commandments. The LRA became infamous for its brutal tactics, including numerous murders and the widespread abduction of children to serve as soldiers and slaves. Boys were often forced to take out their own families to sever ties to their communities, while girls were subjected to sexual violence and forced marriages. Designated a terrorist organization in 2008, its power has significantly diminished due to sustained military pressure, but the LRA continues to pose a threat. Hamas, aka the Islamic Resistance Movement, is a Palestinian nationalist Sunni organization. Founded in 1987 during the First Intifada as an offshoot of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, it emerged as a reaction to the perceived failures of secular nationalist movements like Fatah. Hamas's original 1988 charter called for the destruction of Israel and the establishment of an Islamic State in historic Palestine, while its 2017 charter revised its stance, stating that its struggle was against Zionists rather than Jews. Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007 after a violent conflict with Fatah, leading to an Israeli-Egyptian blockade of Gaza. Since then, Hamas and Israel have been involved in multiple wars, and the ongoing conflict that began in October 2023 when Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, costing the lives of nearly 1,200 people. Israel responded with airstrikes and ground invasions, which led to the deaths of Hamas militants and many Palestinian civilians. The conflict remains unresolved. Hezbollah is a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and paramilitary group. Founded in 1982 by Lebanese clerics as a response to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, it was heavily influenced by the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Its key objectives include expelling Western influence, supporting Lebanese self-determination, opposing Israel, and establishing an Islamic government based on Iran's political ideology. During the 80s and 90s, Hezbollah engaged in guerrilla warfare against Israeli forces and the South Lebanon Army, leading to Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon. The group played a major role in the 2006 Lebanon War and later intervened in the Syrian civil war. Hezbollah is now considered stronger than the Lebanese army. It's been linked to the 1983 Beirut barracks bombings, the 2005 assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri, as well as various hijackings and other bombings. Regarded as a resistance movement by some, over 21 countries have designated it as a terrorist organization. In October 2023, Hezbollah entered into an open conflict with Israel, leading to an Israeli invasion of Lebanon. The conflict is currently in a ceasefire. The Irgun was a Zionist paramilitary group active in Mandatory Palestine from 1931 to 48, following the revisionist Zionism of Ze'ev Jabotinsky. It carried out attacks against Palestinian Arabs and British authorities, whom it saw as illegal occupiers. Its most infamous actions include the 1946 bombing of the British headquarters in Jerusalem and the 48 Deir Yassin massacre, where at least 107 Palestinian Arab villagers lost their lives. After Israel's establishment, the Irgun was absorbed into the Israel Defense Forces, but tensions led to the 1948 Al-Talina confrontation before its formal disbandment in 1949. The Fatah Revolutionary Council, better known as Abu Nidal Organization, was a Palestinian militant group founded in 1974 by Abu Nidal after breaking away from Fatah due to disagreements with Yasser Arafat. While advocating for pan-Arabism and the destruction of Israel, in practice the ANO largely served Abu Nidal's personal agendas, operating as a secular, leftist, anti-Zionist and anti-Western terrorist group. Though designated a terrorist organization by numerous countries, the group received support from Iraq, Syria and Libya at various points. ANO became infamous for its global campaign of terror, conducting hijackings, assassinations, kidnappings of diplomats and attacks on synagogues. It carried out at least 90 terrorist attacks across 20 countries, resulting in around 2,000 casualties. Abu Nidal died in Baghdad in 2002 under disputed circumstances, marking the end of the group. Lehi was a Zionist militant group founded by Avraham Stern in 1940 with the goal of driving out the British authorities from Mandatory Palestine to establish a Jewish state. Lehi sought alliances with fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, believing Britain was the greater enemy. After Stern's death, the group supported Stalin's regime and adopted the ideology of National Bolshevism, a blend of revolutionary socialism and nationalism, advocating for a greater Israel. Lehi was responsible for multiple attacks, including the 1946 deaths of British soldiers in Tel Aviv, the mining of the Cairo-Haifa train that cost dozens of lives, and the assassination of Lord Moyne, the British minister resident in the Middle East. Alongside the Irgun, Lehi also participated in the Deir Yassin massacre. The group was officially disbanded in 1948 but later assassinated UN mediator Folke Bernadotte. Though initially declared a terrorist organization by Israel, Lehi members were eventually granted amnesty and former leader Yitzhak Shamir later became Israel's prime minister. Atomwaffen Division was a decentralized neo-Nazi terrorist network founded in the US in 2013 by Brandon Russell. It quickly expanded internationally with cells in the UK, Canada, Germany, Brazil, Estonia, Finland and Argentina, with suspected ones in Russia and Switzerland. The group promoted an extreme accelerationist ideology, advocating for guerrilla warfare to collapse governments and establish a white ethno-state. They burned US flags and copies of the Constitution while encouraging attacks against racial minorities, LGBTQ individuals, Jews, and the US government itself. Atomwaffen members have been linked to multiple murders, bombings, kidnappings, and torture, along with planned terrorist attacks, including mass murder plots, attempts to sabotage water systems, and plans to cripple the US power grid. They even plotted to blow up nuclear power stations. The group promoted a white jihad, idolized Osama bin Laden, and sought alliances with Islamic terrorist organizations like Hamas, admiring the martyrdom culture of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. In 2020, Atomwaffen rebranded as the National Socialist Order but allegedly disbanded in 2024. The Maoist Communist Party of India is a far-left extremist group aiming to overthrow the Indian government and establish a Marxist-Leninist Maoist state. The movement goes back to a 1960s peasant uprising in West Bengal, where local communist leaders mobilized landless peasants against feudal landowners. This rebellion quickly escalated into an armed insurgency spreading across multiple Indian states. Over the decades, the movement fragmented, but the 2004 merger of the Maoist Communist Center of India and the People's War Group led to the consolidation of their power. This strengthened the insurgency, with Maoist combatants known as Naxalites engaging in attacks and bombings. Notable attacks include the 2010 massacre of 76 paramilitary personnel and the 2013 ambush in Darbar Valley. The Naxalite insurgency remains one of India's most persistent threats. Combat 18 is a neo-Nazi terrorist group founded in the UK in 1992, rejecting electoral politics in favor of violent extremism. Originally created as a protection squad for the far-right British National Party, it quickly expanded internationally, with branches in Canada, the US, Germany, Australia, and Belgium. The group has been linked to multiple hate crimes, including the murder of immigrants, leftists, and German politicians. The group is banned in Germany but continues its operations. The Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, short LTTE, was a militant organization in Sri Lanka that sought to establish an independent Tamil state in response to discrimination and violent persecution of Sri Lankan Tamils by the Sinhalese-dominated government. The LTTE rapidly became the most powerful Tamil militant group, known for guerrilla warfare, bombings, and high-profile assassinations, including that of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Sri Lankan President Rana Singhe Premadasa. It was also infamous for using women and children in combat. After Black July in 1983, a week-long anti-Tamil pogrom, the LTTE escalated into full-scale war with the Sri Lankan government, leading to a 26-year-long Sri Lankan civil war. The conflict resulted in at least 100,000 deaths, and around 800,000 Sri Lankan Tamils fled the country. Velupillai Prabhakaran led the group until he was taken out in 2009, marking the LTTE's military defeat and the end of the civil war. Al-Shabaab is a Somali Salafi jihadist group allied with Al-Qaeda and actively engaged in the Somali civil war. It frequently accuses other Muslims of apostasy to justify terrorist attacks on Somali civilians and government forces. It emerged in the mid-2000s as a youth militia and gained prominence during Ethiopia's invasion of Somalia, presenting itself as a resistance force. Ethiopia supported Somalia's transitional federal government against the Islamic Courts Union, ICU. Al-Shabaab, originally a militant wing of the ICU, saw this government as complicit in the invasion. This fueled their armed resistance. Designated as a terrorist group by several countries, Al-Shabaab has suffered territorial losses since 2014 and shifted to guerrilla warfare and high-casualty terror attacks. It has carried out deadly incidents such as the 2013 Westgate attack in Kenya, the October 2017 Mogadishu bombings, and the 2022 Somali Ministry of Education bombings. It also extends its insurgency to Kenya and launched an invasion into Ethiopia in 2022. The Shining Path, the self-named Communist Party of Peru, is a Maoist guerrilla group founded by Abimael Guzman in 1969. It sought to overthrow the Peruvian government through a people's war and establish a Maoist new democracy, believing this would eventually lead to full communism, sparking a world revolution. The group became notorious for extreme brutality, carrying out assassinations, bombings, beheadings, and massacres against peasants, political rivals, and civilians. It also rejects human rights. The Shining Path is responsible for over 30,000 deaths and disappearances during Peru's armed conflict. After the capture of its leaders, its influence waned, but the militarized Communist Party of Peru faction remains active. Euskadi Ta Askatasuna, short ETA, was a Basque nationalist and far-left separatist group in the Basque country located between France and Spain. It operated between 1959 and 2018 and sought independence from Spain and France. Originally a pacifist movement, it became a paramilitary group during Francoist Spain, carrying out bombings, assassinations and kidnappings mainly in the southern Basque country, Madrid and Barcelona. ETA was responsible for over 800 deaths, including 340 civilians, and injured more than 20,000 people. Recognized as a terrorist organization by multiple countries, it officially disbanded in 2018. The Army of God is an American underground Christian terrorist group that targets abortion clinics and doctors who perform abortions. Since its formation in 1982, members have committed kidnappings, murder, arson, acid attacks and bombings, often operating independently in a leaderless resistance structure. They also claimed responsibility for Eric Robert Rudolph's 1997 nail bombings of abortion clinics in Atlanta and Birmingham, as well as an attack on a lesbian bar in Atlanta. The Black September organization was a Palestinian militant group formed in 1970, named after the conflict in which the Jordanian army violently clashed with the Palestinian factions, leading to thousands of Palestinian casualties and the expulsion of the Palestine Liberation Organization from Jordan. Many members sought revenge and continued their fight for Palestinian liberation, leading to the creation of Black September. The group is infamous for the 1972 Munich massacre, where they caused the death of 11 Israeli athletes during the Summer Olympics, along with a German policeman. Black September was also responsible for the assassination of Jordanian Prime Minister Wasfi Tal, the hijacking of Sabina Flight 571, and the murder of the US ambassador to Sudan. By the late 1970s, the group eventually disbanded. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, short FARC, was a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla group that emerged in the 1960s during Colombia's ongoing internal conflict. It originally grew out of peasant self-defense groups and promoted agrarianism and anti-imperialism. Over time, FARC financed its operations through kidnapping, extortion, illegal mining, and narcotics trafficking. The group was responsible for numerous assassinations of civilians, politicians, and indigenous communities, as well as large-scale assaults on Colombia's energy infrastructure. They also executed civilians for failing to pay their war taxes. By 2014, it had shifted tactics to ambushes, landmines, and bombings rather than direct military attacks, causing many more civilian casualties. As of 2024, peace talks with the government continue. Lashkar-e-Taiba is a Pakistani Islamist Salafi jihadist organization with the primary goal of merging the northernmost region of the Indian subcontinent with Pakistan. After that, the group aims for the conquest of India and the imposition of Muslim rule over the subcontinent. Founded in 1985 by Hafiz Saeed and other Islamist mujahideen with financial support from Osama bin Laden during the Soviet-Afghan War, LET considers jihad a religious obligation for every Muslim. The group is notorious for its attacks on Indian forces and has carried out numerous deadly terrorist attacks, including the 1998 Wanhama massacre, the Chiting Singhpura massacre, the 2005 Delhi bombings, and the 2006 and 2008 Mumbai attacks, causing over 1,000 deaths, mainly civilians. The group is still active today. M19 was a Colombian leftist urban guerrilla movement active in the late 70s and 80s, formed in response to alleged electoral fraud in the 1970 election. M19 became known for actions like stealing Simon Bolivar's sword in 1974 as a propaganda move and kidnapping union leader José Mercado, accusing him of betraying Colombian workers to US imperialism. In 1980, they stormed the Dominican Republic's embassy in Bogota and took diplomats hostage, though that ended peacefully. However, their most infamous act was the 1985 Palace of Justice siege, where they took the Supreme Court hostage, demanding the president be put on trial. The military's response resulted in over 100 deaths, including civilians, and rumors persist that Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel funded the operation to destroy incriminating legal files. M19 later demobilized and transitioned to politics, but many of its leaders were assassinated. The Black Liberation Army was a militant underground group that operated in the US from 1970 to 1981, rooted in Marxist-Leninism and black nationalism. Formed by former Black Panthers and Republic of New Africa members, the BLA saw itself as an armed revolutionary force fighting against the US government for black liberation and self-determination. It carried out bombings, assassinations of police officers and white civilians, robberies, plane hijackings, and prison breaks. The group remained active until 1981, when an armed robbery involving BLA and Weather Underground members resulted in the deaths of 2 police officers and a security guard. Many of its members were later arrested. Jemaah Islamiyah was an Islamist militant group based in Indonesia, aiming to establish an Islamic state across the region. It had roots in the 1940s Darul Islam movement and operated transnationally with cells in Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines with close ties to Al-Qaeda. Initially active in communal conflicts in Maluku and Poso, JI later focused on attacking Western interests. In 2002, it carried out the Bali bombings in Kuta in retaliation for US support of the war on terror. It was also behind the 2003 JW Marriott bombing, the 2004 Australian embassy bombing, the 2005 Bali bombings, and the 2009 Jakarta hotel attacks, among many others. Over the years, most of its leaders were captured, and in 2024, key members in Indonesia dissolved the organization. The Red Brigades was an Italian Marxist-Leninist terrorist group active during the years of lead. Formed in 1970, it aimed to create a revolutionary state through armed struggle and remove Italy from NATO. The group gained notoriety for sabotage, bank robberies, and torturing industrialists, bankers, and politicians it viewed as exploitative. It was responsible for kidnapping and murdering perceived enemies of the working class revolution, including the 1978 assassination of former Prime Minister Aldo Moro. In the 70s and 80s, Red Brigade's attacks cost the life of 75 people before Italian authorities dismantled the group. A resurgence in the late 90s led to further political assassinations, but the organization is now largely defunct. Ordine Nero, the Black Order, was an Italian neo-fascist terrorist group founded in 1974. Its goal was to destroy the liberal democratic state and replace it with a fascist regime, famously vowing to drown democracy under a mountain of dead. The group targeted what it saw as threats to the nation: communists in parliament, dark-skinned immigrants in the labor force, and Jews in positions of power, believing only a racially and culturally homogeneous state could restore Italy's strength. Between 1974 and 78, Ordine Nero carried out bombings across Italy that caused at least 23 casualties. Government crackdowns, internal fractures, and arrests eventually led to its decline. The Red Army faction, aka Baader-Meinhof Group, was a West German far-left terrorist organization active from 1970 to 1998. As a communist urban guerrilla group, the RAF waged an armed campaign against what it saw as a fascist state. It carried out bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, and bank robberies, peaking in 1977 during the German Autumn. This period saw the kidnapping and murder of industrialist Hans-Martin Schleyer, the hijacking of Lufthansa Flight 181, and the self-inflicted deaths of the group's imprisoned leaders. Responsible for 34 deaths, the RAF received support from the Stasi and other Eastern Bloc security services. It formally dissolved in 1998, and founding member Horst Mahler later became a vocal neo-Nazi. The Jewish Defense League is a far-right organization founded in 1968 by Meir Kahan in New York, with the stated goal of protecting Jews from anti-Semitism by whatever means necessary. Over the years, it became known for violent actions, with the FBI classifying it as a right-wing terrorist group. The JDL engaged in bombings of Arab and Soviet targets in the US and assassinations of individuals it deemed enemies of the Jewish people. Incidents include the 1972 bombing of Sol Hurok's Manhattan office, the 1985 murder of Arab-American activist Alex Odeh, and connections to the 1994 Cave of the Patriarchs massacre. The group also plotted to assassinate US Representative Darrell Issa and bomb a mosque in California. Internationally, the French chapter has been linked to violent attacks, including assaults on peace activists, journalists, and police officers. While the JDL is largely inactive in the US and Canada, it remains active in France. The Japanese Red Army was a militant communist group active from 1971 to 2001. Founded by Fusaku Shigenobu, the group sought to spark revolution through violence and was designated a terrorist organization by both Japan and the US. Operating primarily out of Lebanon, the JRA collaborated with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and received support from countries like Libya, Syria, and North Korea. During the 70s and 80s, the JRA was involved in several notorious attacks, including the 1972 Lod Airport massacre, where 26 people lost their lives. The group also took many hostages, demanding ransom, and stormed the French embassy in The Hague in 1974. And then there was the 1977 hijacking of Malaysian Airlines Flight 653, which caused the death of all 100 people on board. By 2001, leader Shigenobu declared the JRA dissolution. The Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, are a Zaidi Shia Islamist group that originated in Yemen in the 1990s. They stand for the fight against the political marginalization of Zaidi Shias. But they have been heavily involved in Yemen's civil war, earning widespread international condemnation for human rights abuses, including targeting civilians, abusing women and children, and using child soldiers. Initially led by Hussein al-Houthi, the movement began as an opposition force against President Ali Abdullah Saleh, accusing him of corruption and being aligned with Saudi Arabia and the US. The group's ideology, influenced by Hezbollah, included strong anti-US, anti-Israel, and anti-Jewish rhetoric. After al-Houthi was taken out by the Yemeni military in 2004, the movement sparked an insurgency. In 2014, the Houthis formed an alliance with Saleh, which led to the seizure of Yemen's capital. This prompted a Saudi-led military intervention, leading to an ongoing conflict. Recently, the Houthis have escalated their actions by targeting Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Israel, claiming solidarity with Palestinians. The Houthis have also been accused of torturing and abducting members of the Baha'i community, accusing them of espionage and apostasy. The Kurdistan Workers' Party is a militant Marxist-Leninist Kurdish separatist group founded in 1978. The PKK emerged in response to Turkish suppression of Kurdish identity after the 1980 military coup and denying the existence of Kurds altogether. The PKK has been at war with Turkey since 1979. The full-scale insurgency began in 1984 when the PKK called for an armed Kurdish uprising. This conflict has cost the lives of over 40,000 people, mostly Kurdish civilians. Both the PKK and Turkish state have been accused of using terror tactics, with the PKK carrying out city bombings, recruiting child soldiers and targeting civilians, while Turkey has burned down Kurdish villages and executed civilians in efforts to root out militants. In February 2025, PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan called on the group to lay down arms and dissolve, urging Turks and Kurds to unite. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is a Marxist-Leninist militant group founded in 1967 by George Habash. It has taken a hardline stance against Israel and opposed Fatah's more moderate approach within the organization. The PFLP was a pioneer in aircraft hijackings and bombings from the 60s to the 90s, targeting both civilians and government officials. Its armed wing, the Abu Ali Mustafa Brigades, has carried out attacks, including the assassination of Israeli Tourism Minister Rehavam Zeevi in 2001 and the 2014 Jerusalem synagogue massacre.